Who am I? Do you mean where I'm from? What I do? What I have done? What I dream? Do you mean what you see? What you see or what I've seen? What I fear? What I dream? Do you mean who I love? Do you mean what I've lost? Who am I? I guess who I am is exactly the same as who you are. Not better than, not less than. Because there is no one who has been or will ever be exactly the same as either you or me. With this quote, Sense8, one of my favorite shows, problematizes life's most defining question. My name is Ebru. I am the child of Middle Eastern German guest workers, a first-generation graduate, a woman, an academic, an aspiring researcher, and a queer Muslim. Growing up, I knew I had access to many spaces. And yet, at the same time, I felt excluded from each one. What I could not name back then became known to me as the in-between. A third space, as Homi Bhabha calls it, a space marked by the intersectional layers of my identity. For the longest time, I was afraid to be who I am, to speak my mind from a place of truth, because I was told by both the white community and the Muslim community that my outspokenness, my choleric personality, my passion, my emotions, my liberal thoughts, my non-heteronormative desires were not modest, not ladylike, that everything about me was just out of the norm. So who I am was something I avoided. I was given the feeling I was not worthy of unconditional love. What is it that we as humans desire the most? To feel loved, to feel worthy, and to be seen as enough. I was 4 years old, one of my very first days at a new kindergarten, and a little boy told me that I was the devil because I had black hair, darker skin, black eyes, and thereof a black soul. It was the same boy who told all the other kids not to play with me, but to lock me up in the bathroom, to beat me up on a public playground, because I looked different, and because I had tried to kiss a girl. This happened in primary school. I got beaten up at the age of 7 because I was brown, because I did not conform to white beauty standards, and because the way I loved fell outside of the norm. These were the 2 moments I first lost my racial blindness, and it was these very moments that I realized the way I loved transcended gender. As I lay there on the cold asphalt, praying for the kids to leave me be, I just stayed silent. I didn't speak up for myself. I felt I had no right. I did not know what I had done so wrong, but I felt that my truth must not coexist in this world. So why do some of us experience such trauma as children? What if I told you I came to the following realization? We all struggle with seeing ourselves and others in the fullness of our intersections. We fail to accept others' truth and celebrate our differences because we deny our own truth. As Sonia Taylor says, what we are most afraid of is the fear of rejection. As the child of immigrants, a first-generation German-born citizen, there is an unspoken duty, an expectation. My father had my entire future planned out from kindergarten to high school and university the day I was born. In fact, he gave me 4 choices in 4th grade. Yes, no pressure. Either, he said, you become a doctor, a lawyer, a teacher, or a failure. We first-generation children, you see, have a lot more responsibility than the average 7-year-old. Everyone struggles, but these struggles are amplified when you're an immigrant. So what does it mean to be the child of immigrants? It means you are all of your parents' hopes and dreams, overflowing in one brown body. I realized later in my life that my father's words were never motivated by bad intentions, but by hope. Many of our parents left everything behind, or lost everything. Their families, homes, escaping wars and corrupt governments, hoping that we, the next generation, will have a future. And as the child of parents that have sacrificed everything for you, you are constantly seeking approval. At the same time, you are constantly reminded that great things are being expected of you. As the daughter of immigrant guest workers, I was a translator, a mediator, and a secretary at the age of 7. I was somewhat of a hybrid. You can imagine this was the case with paperwork, with phone calls and doctor's appointments. So you navigate different roles from a very early age. As the child of immigrants, you are perfect at code switching, at speaking multiple languages at once. So language becomes your instrument of thought, of expression, of resistance, of art. To be the child of immigrants, that is one of the greatest blessings. But what happens when a blessing becomes a burden? It means that others around you, teachers and later as employers, often assume you will not make it. I remember the parent-teacher conference in 4th grade very clearly. All I hear is the ticking of that old gray clock. A suffocating silence so loud, I can almost grasp it. And when my teacher finally speaks, she says, "Listen, Mr. and Mrs. Calin, I really do not think your daughter has what it takes to succeed in academia. I can see her as a hairdresser, in retail, but I just don't see her graduate medical school someday. She will crack under pressure." Little did she know that someday I would be given the opportunity to become a doctor of a different kind. Little did she know that the exact thing uttered to break me is the very reason I am speaking today. Did you ever have to justify your existence? The second you claim that you are queer and a Muslim and have had the privilege to acquire an education as an immigrant, you take up a space that is not given, a space that is claimed. The second you admit to yourself and the world around you that you are a queer Muslim, you become visible. So what does it mean to be queer and a Muslim? It means that you are asked over and over again, where are you really from? I am from Germany. The instant I say this, many individuals get uncomfortable. Why is that? The answer is we as humans function the best when we have labels at our disposal. So let me try this again. I am from the Middle East. I am a Muslim and an immigrant. In my experience, most white people feel more comfortable with this answer. Let me ask you a question. Where are you from? Chances are, if you happen to be white in Europe, you never had to justify your existence. in the same way. Despite people's best intentions, this question transcends a geographic region. It is politically loaded. It is about your race, your religion, your ethnicity, and sexuality. And phrased more politely, you are asked, how can you be queer when you are Muslim? So when you think of a proud and out queer person, who do you picture? Chances are, not me, not a brown Muslim woman. Due to the lack of visibility of queerness in the Muslim community, our identities are marked by anxiety, and we do not dare to talk about being queer and a Muslim. On the other side of the spectrum, we have Western politicized and ideological schemes that depict Muslim sexuality as either tyrannical or submissive and obedient. The narrative we fall prey to in both scenarios is that Muslims cannot be queer. I personally focused for so long on the fear of being condemned by everyone around me that I suppressed the very part of me that makes me, me. After the incident in primary school, I desexualized myself. After all, I had this twisted thought that if I ignored my physical attraction, I wouldn't ever have to confront my pansexuality. Even though I was a member of several Muslim communities, I struggled to connect with other Muslims on a meaningful level because I was consumed by the fear of being labeled as too queer. When I found myself in queer spaces dominated by white people, I yet again felt just not quite right, as I feared being categorized as not queer enough because of my faith. What happens when fear infects the human mind? Like a parasite, it grows, spreading more fear, and many of us learn the art of being silent. We learn to believe that being Muslim and a queer is incompatible. And as we are not immune to fear, we in turn render ourselves silent, questioning our value in the world. So who am I in a world that tells me I do not exist? Am I Muslim enough? Am I queer enough? One day I decided to take a step. I dared to ask, where exactly in the Quran is it condemned to be queer? My research has shown that there is room for queer people in Islam. Several influential leaders throughout the centuries were openly what we would call today gender non-conforming. So instead of asking, why me? Why us? I want to ask, why not us? I dared to take a step further. I asked myself, what if I am especially loved by God? One of the stepping stones of my research was getting to know Blair Imani through her actions and her writings. Imani is an American author, historian, activist, and queer Black Muslim woman. In July 2016, Imani was not only arrested for non-violently protesting the murder of Alton Sterling, but a police officer forcefully removed her hijab. In the face of all of that, Imani did not only take her time to pray amid the violent arrests, but because of the atrocities happening to marginalized communities, she continues to advocate for justice, for people like me. Her courage allowed me to come to an awakening. Loving beyond gender is not what would be unforgivable. As Noe Mark says, the real violence, the violence I realized was unforgivable, is the violence that we do to ourselves when we're too afraid to be who we really are. Betraying myself by not authentically standing up for both my faith and my queerness is an act of violence, as I have been complicit in reproducing the narrative that religion and queerness are not to be reconciled. Imani's story inspired me to embark on a journey to reclaim my kind of Islam and live a life more authentic to me. In October of 2017, in Istanbul, I took the third step in reclaiming my kind of Islam. I entered a mosque for the first time in my life. Entering the mosque challenged me to confront the parts of my identity I had suppressed for so long. And standing in the middle of God's temple, going into prayer position and looking at the beautiful high ceiling, I took my first breath. The breath I hadn't known I had been holding my entire life. And as I inhaled, a stream of relief poured through every inch of my body. And for the first time in my life, I understood that my identity as a queer Muslim is a divine purpose in itself. I became mindful that there are roughly 1.8 billion Muslims on this earth, meaning there are billions of ways to practice your Islam. I realized that faith is something so intimate that judgment has no space in religion, especially in a religion that literally stands for peace. For the first time, I accepted myself at the intersection of my faith and my sexuality, and I finally felt that I was seen, and in return, I saw me. It took 3 essential steps to shed those chains of self-delusion. I dared to ask, I dared to enter, and I dared to see. And as I exhaled in that mosque, I thought, we exist. As I formed these 2 words, I spoke not just as a me, I spoke as a we. Deconstructing the weaponized myth of not being Muslim enough or queer enough allows me to create a space for voices like mine. Both my queerness and my religion inform my identity. So in the words of Blair Imani, there is nothing to reconcile. I am standing here today to tell you that I am more kind and understanding, authentic and forgiving because of my religion. And I am more reflective and thoughtful with my words because of my queerness. Without one or the other, there is no me. In this life, we will face judgment for many things that is out of our control. But one thing we are in control of as queer Muslims is teaching ourselves and our children that we are worthy of love, belonging, humanity. We are in control of rising in our truths unapologetically.